Hi, it's me. The guy who knows that his attempt at a cosplay is ruined slightly by his glasses, but also he needs to see, so... For the unenlightened, Percy Jackson and the Olympians is a middle-grade fantasy book series from the 2000s written by Riordan. It was probably my favorite book series growing up, not written by someone who hates trans people. And in 2010 and 2013, they made films based on the first two books that fans of the series unanimously agree are terrible adaptations, and film critics largely agree are bad movies. Which is a little surprising because the first one is directed by Chris Columbus, who also directed the first two films in the Harry Potter series. And say what you want about that franchise, but those first two movies are pretty much as faithful an adaptation of their source material that you could ask for. And if he just took as much care capturing the spirit of the first Percy Jackson book with its film, it could have been legendary. And then the second film was directed by Thor Freudenthal, who's responsible for another great adaptation of a middle grade book, the first Diary of a Wimpy Kid film. So what went wrong, guys? Now, I'm aware that there already exist several videos about these films, especially the first one.
It's like high school without the musical.
So, high school.
So, high school.
So it's high school.
So, high school? Yeah, pretty much.
So I'm not gonna go super in depth on that film, The Lightning Thief, as it's the sequel, The Sea of Monsters, that I'm really fascinated by. But for context, I do want to briefly talk about where that first movie went so wrong. Mainly how, I don't really like any of the characters in it. None of them are particularly funny, or likable, or relatable. They also don't have distinct personalities from each other. Like, based solely on the movie, I couldn't tell you what makes this version of Percy different from the love interest Annabeth or the villain Luke. They're all just generally kind of moody and sarcastic.
Heads up.
In fact, I think the only character in the movies with something even resembling a personality is Percy's satyr friend Grover. And even that, I think, is mostly due to Brandon T. Jackson's performance because they didn't write anything funny for him to say.
Nashville? Oh, great. Home of my least favorite music. Yeah!
It also should be mentioned that the main characters, who were like 12 in the first book, were aged up to 16 for the movie. And I don't think that alone is why it doesn't work. Like, it's theoretically possible to make a good fantasy movie starring teenagers, but they didn't make any other changes to the story to justify it. Like, these are still children's movies where they're worried about childish things and making family-friendly jokes, and even if I hadn't read the books, I still feel it's obvious that these goofy fantasy adventures they go on would be better suited to featuring child characters. And it's made even worse because the actors they hired to play these characters look even older than teenagers to me. Like, they're clearly all in their 20s. So you end up with scenes where Percy is like whining about his jerk stepdad, and it's like, bro, you could be somebody's stepdad. So yeah, despite doing decent at the box office, it certainly didn't gain much critical praise, and I feel even children at the time, like myself, who might have been moderately entertained by it, still pretty much forgot everything about the movie the moment they left the theater. So only the gods know why they decided to make a sequel. Like, the purpose of a sequel is, well, money. But from a storytelling standpoint, it's to go on another adventure with the characters and world that you fell in love with in the first film. But in this case, people didn't like the first movie. So with Percy Jackson's Sea of Monsters, the filmmakers were tasked with creating another adventure in this world that nobody cared about, with boring, indistinct characters that nobody remembered. And the result is a movie that kind of feels like it's trying to gaslight you by being all, return to the beloved world of myth and magic that audiences fell in love with for another adventure with all your favorite characters. Like Percy, the main boy. He's like nice and kind of sarcastic sometimes or something. He was brave, probably, right? I mean, his name's in the title, so, There's also Annabeth, who's, pretty, and I guess she's also generally nice and sometimes sarcastic. Maybe she's like a little smarter than Percy? Like, she's kind of the smart one, maybe? And Rover. What? Oh, and Grover, the funny one. Not that the others don't make jokes sometimes, but he does more. I mean, look, in this scene he dances. What a goofball! The fact is, you all love these characters and are excited to see them on screen again. What do you mean? Yes, you are. You sound crazy right now. Does what I'm saying make any sense? Hopefully if it doesn't now, it will as we go through the movie. So it opens with a flashback where Percy in voiceover tells of 4 children who are fleeing to Camp Half-Blood from unseen monsters, when one of them, Thalia, who seems to have developed a goth aesthetic much younger than most people do, sacrifices herself to let the others escape. But her father, Zeus, rewards her bravery by bringing her back to life, in the form of a tree that acts as a magical barrier from danger around Camp Half-Blood. Which I guess was cool of him, but as a god, does he not have the ability to just resurrect her and then separately create a barrier without turning his daughter into Tracy Tree from Rainforest Cafe? We then transition to present day where Percy Jackson is facing an obstacle course in competition with a new character, Clarisse, daughter of Ares.
How nice of you to show up just to watch me win.
You know, everything they say about you is wrong, Clarisse. You actually do have a sense of humor.
Who is also a 25-year-old playing a 17-year-old character who is 12 in the books, because we gotta be consistent here. But Percy sacrifices victory to help a straggling fellow camper, allowing Clarisse to win. Because that's how Percy was in the first movie, right? He's nice. I know, because I remember watching it, and so do you. Watching this event are Dionysus, played by Stanley Tucci, who I'll admit is pretty well cast.
Well, the Christians have a guy who can do this trick in reverse. Now that's a god.
And Chiron, recast with Anthony Head after being portrayed by Pierce Brosnan in The Lightning Thief.
You have real horses.
Oh, but Mamma Mia Part 2 he comes back for. Fun fact, Pierce Brosnan actually didn't return because he was a big fan of the books and felt betrayed by how unfaithful the first film was. No, I made that up. He was probably just too expensive, but wouldn't have that been cool? After Clarisse gloats that Percy's success in the first movie was just beginner's luck, he's comforted by Annabeth and Grover.
Even for the daughter of the god of war, that girl's a mythic.
Don't listen to her, Percy.
Why'd you stop him? Let him say bitch. He's 29 years old.
I would lick a pair of cloven hooves before I let you listen to Clarisse instead of us. No offense, Grover.
Oh, none taken. Is that an offer?
Yes, I love knowing that Grover canonically likes getting his hooves licked by women. I love that! Percy then goes to complain to his father, Poseidon, about feeling unworthy of his accomplishments.
Have you ever felt like everything you'd ever done, maybe you didn't really do it? It was all just luck or something? Makes you question whether you were all that good to begin with.
So yeah, that's Percy's character arc in this movie, and despite not coming from the books, it is another example of something that I could buy a 12-year-old being concerned with, but not a 20-something. Like, Percy here instead looks like he should be worried about, going out to the club. I don't know what people in their 20s do. I'm making a video about Percy Jackson. You think I have a social life? Anyway, Percy is summoned by Chiron, who informs him that someone's wandered into camp claiming to be another son of Poseidon. In other words, Percy's brother. But instead of being half human like Percy, he's half sea nymph, which makes him...
Hi. Hi, brother.
Tyson is another character who's not only aged up from the books, but they also made him way cuter. Because everybody needs to be conventionally attractive. I mean, why else would anybody come see this movie? Because they're invested in the story? Don't be ridiculous. At breakfast, Percy seems embarrassed to have a Cyclops brother when a robot bull suddenly attacks camp. In an action sequence that's fine, I guess, Percy is able to blow it up. When Luke, who's the villain from the first film, by the way, in case you forgot about his iconic personality.
Where's your helmet?
No one gave me one.
Chiron, you still got your wheelchair? Kid's gonna need it. You're a goner, man. I'm messing with you. Smile a little bit. It's good for you, kid.
Makes an appearance and warns Percy about a prophecy.
What prophecy? What are you talking about?
You don't know.
We'll add that to the long list of things your buddy Chiron hasn't shared with you.
A prophecy which was foreshadowed in the first book, but not the first movie, which makes me feel that they didn't even think when writing the first one that they were gonna get a sequel, instincts that should have been correct. Luke then teleports away. They then discover the barrier has become fragile after Luke poisoned Thalia's tree. Percy asks Chiron if it's true there's a prophecy about him, and he's told to speak to something called the Oracle, which remembers when they first invented chocolate, and tells him a prediction of the future that seems to concern him.
Only one half-blood child of the 3 eldest gods can defeat him. This child shall be our salvation, or the cause of our destruction.
And can I just point out the audacity of now trying to set things up for the rest of the books in the series when it's a miracle that they got to adapt to, using a very generous definition of the word adapt.
A single choice shall end his days, Olympus to preserve or raise. And that is raise with a Z, as in destroy, I asked.
Alex, I'll take moments that would have been funnier to actually see than to just hear recounted for 500. After Annabeth tells Dionysus that an artifact known as the Golden Fleece can heal Thalia's tree, he tasks Clarisse with going on a quest to retrieve it. But Percy, who thinks that the prophecy implies he's supposed to be the one to go after it, sneaks out of camp joined by Annabeth, Grover, and Tyson. But Annabeth, who's like racist against Cyclops in this movie, says he can only come if she sprays him with a mist that makes him look normal.
Extreme makeover alert.
It feels like all the jokes in this movie were just written as placeholders that they never got around to actually punching up. Annabeth then hails them a taxi driven by the Fates, 3 sisters who share a single eye. And this sequence, how do I explain it? It feels like watching somebody bomb stand-up.
Are you all right? Yes. No, you are all left.
Like it's clearly supposed to be funny, but it's not, which makes it feel way longer than it actually is.
Oh, no, you didn't! Yes, I did! Oh, you stupid witch!
Hands on the wheel at least, okay?
Also, I know that as a white guy in glasses making commentary videos, I'm the last person who should be calling things out for unoriginality, but this is also just basically the night bus sequence from Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, only bad. Anyway, Percy hears them mention the prophecy and asks them about it, to which they only give him a series of numbers.
30, 31, 75, 12.
What?
Then after discovering they don't have enough money, they drop them off in Washington, D.C., halfway to their destination.
Zeus? Zeus? Stop it. This isn't Olympus, okay? This is the Capitol building.
Which we're going to storm because the election was stolen from us.
Looks like Olympus.
Right down to the dudes with power who only care about themselves.
All right, Grover, I'll give you that one. That was pretty based. They then go to a magic coffee shop where Grover orders something called nectar.
Nectar?
You haven't had, you haven't lived, buddy.
I've lived.
Me after touching boobs for the first time? I don't know. Grover is then captured by some of Luke's henchmen and they teleport away. Annabeth then has the idea to speak with Luke's father, Hermes, the messenger god, who's conveniently located in a nearby UPS store. He also has a staff with 2 sassy snakes on it.
Bad enough some of our relatives are hanging out with Medusa, turning people to stone.
All right.
You can tell from Percy's response that that isn't what he thought they were saying on set. Makes you wonder how unfunny the original dialogue was if this was the rewrite. Hermes gives them a thermos of magical winds.
Hercules bus heads?
Best TV show ever, so of course, canceled.
So that line was a reference to Firefly, which is like a beloved series that Hermes actor Nathan Fillion was in that got canceled. And like, who was that line for? Is there a lot of overlap between Percy Jackson and Firefly fans? They learn Luke is on a nearby ship, which they travel to on the back of a hippocampus sent by Poseidon. And these shots of them riding on its back in awe are another example of something that would work so much better if they were children. Like at these actors' age, I feel they'd only be interested in a magical water horse if it were dealing them ecstasy. After boarding the ship, they're quickly captured and taken to Luke by his henchmen. He explains to them that he's also after the fleece to revive the Titan Kronos, who he hopes will help him destroy Olympus.
Wasn't easy to find. I had to crawl through the depths of Tartarus itself. Then Cleveland.
Ha! Because Tartarus is like a weird sounding fictional place, and Cleveland is a real normal sounding place, and those are 2 different things. Man, was a Ouija board used to contact the ghost of George Carlin to help write these jokes? They're thrown in the brig, but are able to escape with some magic tape given to them by Hermes.
Instant hole.
Whoa, Percy, you cannot call Annabeth that. I'm sorry. In a confrontation with Luke, Percy makes use of his water abilities.
Not this again.
Not this again! You know, like the classic moment from the first movie, the iconic moment in cinema that everybody remembers where he also splashed me with water. Annabeth and Tyson escape on a raft with the help of the wind thermos, and Percy like surfs to catch up with them while being pursued by Luke.
You're on the losing side!
And it looks ridiculous, like only slightly better than the 60s Batman show. On the raft, Tyson explains how he's been feared all his life.
I was in the mountains one day, and some campers, Boy Scouts, showed up. And when they saw me, they screamed. They ran.
But now that I think about it, that might have been because my balls were out. So we find out that Annabeth hates Cyclops because that's what her friend Thalia was killed by. Who cares? Before they're consumed by the sea monster Charybdis. They end up in its stomach and hear a familiar voice.
That sounded like Clarisse.
No, it couldn't be her.
You ridiculously stupid moron!
No, it's her.
Yep, that's her. You know, Clarisse, the classic character that you, the audience, are completely familiar with after the 2 scenes that she was in. So they meet up with Clarisse and her crew of undead sailors.
Wait, your crew is zombies?
Well, they prefer dead Confederate sailors whose lives have been given in tribute to Ares.
But zombies is fine.
Really? Is it fine? Because the other guys were clearly offended by it. Come on, dude, don't be such an Uncle Zom. Percy then blasts the beast from the inside so that they can escape.
You should watch what you eat.
Okay, is there anybody alive who would have thought that line was cool? You better watch what you eat. Like, I feel the instant that a child knows enough English to understand that line, they're already intelligent enough to realize how lame it is. They survive being regurgitated, and Percy thinks they should head to an island in Florida as he realizes the numbers given to him by the fates were coordinates.
30, 31, 75, 12.
Ha! Water boy figured it out.
And he called you crazy.
Actually, he called you crazy.
Hey, eye on the road.
It's crazy that they cut back to the sisters there. Like, did they think we'd be excited to see them again? Like, yes, the Fates! I thought we had seen the last of them in this movie, but here we are with another iconic moment from such beloved characters! So they arrive at the island, which is home to an amusement park, and yo, the guy on the left here looks sick. Anyway, they find a ride that leads to the lair of a Cyclops who has the fleece. Also there is Grover, who's posing as its bride to avoid being eaten.
Hey!
Why are you wearing a dress?
I'm having a really bad day.
A man wearing a dress? This is crazy. This is not normal. Like, I thought you guys were all about ancient Greece.
Hey. Do not let that go viral.
When my dad was forced to see this movie by 12-year-old me, I remember him saying to that line, where would it go viral? Just in their little tribe? They obtain the fleece, and Grover reveals the truth as they escape.
I quit!
Wait, you're a dude? Well, that explains a lot.
No woman listens to that much Joe Rogan. They get out, but are then confronted by Luke and his gang, who demand they hand over the fleece. When they refuse, he shoots Percy, but Tyson takes the arrow instead.
You do it for me.
Oh no, not Tyson. Now who will provide us with such hilarious gags as mistaking the Capitol building for Olympus? This will leave a Cyclops-shaped hole in my heart that will never be filled. Luke then ties up the others so they can watch as he resurrects Kronos.
You used to be one of us.
And then I woke up.
Me to my Bible study group after discovering r/atheism. As Kronos begins to form, Percy uses Riptide to break him and the others free, before fighting his way through all of Luke's henchmen, which looks so lame because he only hits them with the handle of his sword. Like, I know it's a PG movie, so it's not like he can maim them, but how about maybe give them swords too, so they could at least have a cool sword fight first? Or would that be too much of a dip into the waters of fun for this movie? Also, Tyson is alive, thank God. They fail to stop the return of Kronos, who immediately eats Luke, but luckily, Percy is able to defeat the Titan by using everything he's learned on his adventure to come up with a genius plan. Just kidding, he can do it because, his sword is magic.
Cursed blade shall reap. I make my own destiny.
Me cooking pizza rolls in the toaster oven, even though there's not instructions for that on the bag. So he defeats Kronos, Luke is dropped into the Cyclops lair. Oh, Annabeth got stabbed? I mean, I assume they're just gonna use the fleece on her, right? Okay, yeah. Glad we got that sorted out. Back at camp, Clarisse puts the fleece on the tree, which restores the protective barrier. Also, do you remember the nectar drink from earlier? Because they do a callback to that.
Nectar. If you haven't had, you haven't lived.
Stop trying to make nectar happen. It's not gonna happen. Days later, it turns out the fleece did its job too well as it resurrected Thalia.
I'm Thalia, daughter of Zeus.
Meaning the prophecy could now have been referring to someone other than Percy.
Maybe the oracle meant Thalia all along. Could she be our salvation or the cause of our destruction?
Wait to find out. In Percy Jackson, the Titans Oh, wait, you don't want a third movie? Oh, you didn't even want a second movie because the first one was so bad? Oh. This movie is the cinematic manifestation of the phrase, they really thought they did something here. As there was no world where another adventure with these versions of the characters that nobody cared about would be able to resuscitate this film franchise that fumbled so badly out the gate. Lucky for us book fans, however, it seems that next month we're finally getting a faithful adaptation of the books in the form of a Disney Plus series that has both the author's involvement and actors that are the correct age. And I just hope that people watch the first season and it gets renewed, because it would be really sad to live in a world where the only adaptation of a Percy Jackson book beyond The Lightning Thief is this.
I know, how cool is that?
Arctic.
Arctic. Who talks like this, dude?